Okay, I think we can start. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Webinars Wednesday. My name is Anna, and I will be moderating today's session. Today, our relationship manager, Robert Peterson-Wakeman, is going to present today's topic, Prices Update Wizard. Just a reminder, you can type your questions into the questions panel on the right side of your screen at any point throughout the session, and we will leave some time at the end for Rob to answer those. Rob, the floor is yours.
Okay, I just want to confirm, Anna, that you can hear me okay and you can also see my screen?
Yes, I can hear you okay and I can see your screen.
Okay, sounds good. I think there was some there was one person in the chat window that just wanted to confirm their audio. So if you notice that they're still having trouble with their audio, you can certainly stop me and we can figure that out. All right, so welcome everybody today. Today's topic is to look at the price list update wizard tool within SAP Business One. We're going to take a brief moment to refresh our memory on some of the tools around price lists, and we're also going to kind of remember how we used to be able to do things in previous versions, and sort of what some of the advantages to using this price list wizard is, so that you can kind of understand, you know, in what cases would I use this price update wizard instead of using the traditional tools. Okay, so we'll take a look at direct price list management. Some of you may be doing this already, some of you may not be, and then we'll review the price list update wizard. So just a quick reminder about how SAP Business One picks the pricing on a document. There's a hierarchy, and this particular slide references unit of measure, although this is a similar hierarchy in every case, regardless of whether multiple units of measure are being used or not. But SAP Business One will look at pricing kind of according to a flow, and it'll go from what it regards as more specific pricing to more generic pricing. So Business One will always look at special pricing first. So if there's a specific price in an item for a specific business partner, they'll typically get that pricing, and it'll usually override other prices. This could be a special price set in the special prices for business partner menu item in Business One, or it could also be a contract price derived from a blanket agreement. The next level is that Business One will look at the various discount groups for an item. So if you've got a discount group that applies to a certain type of item, like say an item from a certain manufacturer or in a certain product class, or even a group of business partners like VIP business partners versus kind of regular shoppers. These discount groups is sort of second on the list. Third would be period and volume discounts. So again, period and volume discounts is a menu item in the price list feature within the inventory module. We'll take a look at and we'll refresh ourselves again in a moment. But items, of course, can have a discount for a certain date range, period. And then, of course, those same items can have a volume discount applied. And then the last kind of most generic level of pricing would just be simply a price list for something. So the price list, or the price on an item that a business partner is going to get if they're at this most generic level, the price list defined on the business partner master is going to define what price the customer gets when an item is placed into the marketing document. And I just see there's one of our participants is having trouble with their audio, Winter Garment. So I just wanted to know about that. I think I'm not sure what we can do at our end, but maybe if you could send a chat to Winter privately there, that'd be great. Okay, so
I will.
Moving on to direct price list. So let's just review again how this functionality works in Business One. So we're really talking about opening up the price list module and taking a look at the prices below it. So we're going to skip over to our demo system. Now, Anna, can you see the demo system?
Yes, I can.
Okay, sounds good. I just always like to make sure that that transition happens, because PowerPoint has a way of taking over your computer. So if we want to find, of course, the pricing area, as probably a lot of you are familiar with, we go into inventory, we go into the folder called price lists, and we expand it out. You can see that I was already there this morning. And there are all of the subcategories. So price list is sort of the main feature, of course, that those period and volume discounts and those discount groups, those were two things that we just talked about in the pricing hierarchy, and of course special prices. And it's not our intention to cover those features today, but certainly it's a great thing to go in and refresh your knowledge on this when you're kind of dealing with the price list wizard. And you can see the price list wizard is the last item in the list here. So, excuse me, we're really just going to quickly open up price lists. And then in this particular system, we have a few price lists defined and price list placeholders. But we've got an MSRP price list defined. We've got a 2-year contract price list defined, which is related to itself. And then we have something called the regular price list that's based upon MSRP. So we're going to use the price list update wizard to manipulate certain specific prices within this. If we wanted to make a wholesale change in a price list, this is traditionally where we would come. We would come in and we would say, okay, if I want to make a change to the regular sales price list, like let's say I just want to change the factor for the entire price list, because all of the prices in the regular sales price list for any individual item is always just a factor of 1.1 to the MSRP price list. And we could change that factor right here and now to 1.2 and hit update, and it would ask us all prices in the price list regular sales price will be updated. Would you like to continue? And we'll just say yes to all. And that'll update all the prices in that price list. So if we were to double click on the row for regular price list, I don't have too many items in this particular demo database. It would show us all of the prices associated with that, and these have just been adjusted to a factor of 1.2 of MSRP. Now if we wanted to make changes individually to prices here, we could do so by being in here. We could change the unit price, say on this particular smartphone, and we could change it to $9.99.99. And if we tab out of that field, the manual flag is activated. So anytime that we do a manual price override on an individual price, it's flagged as manual, so that any change that we make to the factor or wholesale change, this price doesn't change anymore. This is probably functionality that you're familiar with. Now, the one thing that we can't do, if this price list is particularly long, like let's say there's 3,000 items in our regular sales price list, and we want to change 100 of those items based on certain selection criteria, the traditional functionality makes it difficult for us to do so. Okay. You can also see, of course, that there are additional currencies available for a price list. This was a feature that came at around version 9.0. If you don't see these additional currency fields exposed in your price list, go into Form Settings. These will likely be switched off, these fields. But if you go ahead and you switch them on, and I'll just click Cancel to leave them active, then you'll get these made available. And what this is it's an ability to set a fixed price list in a secondary, in one or two other currencies. And what this means is that the system will no longer take the exchange rate to determine, like, let's say the US dollar price or the euro price for a particular item in a price list. it'll take a manual rate. So if additional currency won, and I'd have to double check to make sure that that was US dollars, but let's say in US dollars, this is, we actually want to set a fixed price of $9.50. Again, we set a manual price, it clicks the manual flag, and that particular currency specific price is set in stone. It's not being manipulated according to an exchange rate. Okay, so those are some of the changes that we've been traditionally able to do based on the kind of the direct manipulation of the sales price list. And as you may recall, there's two selections here. We can select, update the price list by selection, which means if we double click on a price list, it just gives us a selection criteria to narrow our search field. So this has always been something where we can sort of narrow the selection criteria, but not to the same extent of the new price list update wizard. So we could choose to just update the price, the regular sales price on smartphones, and it would just give us that entry there, and we could go ahead and update it. Okay, so far so good. So now we're going to take a look at the price list update wizard. And the price list update wizard allows us to do a similar thing. It allows us to affect large batch wholesale changes to price lists, but with a deeper selection criteria. And we can use the wizard in 4 significant ways. So we'll describe these sort of one by one right now, but we'll do a couple of examples. We'll follow the first 2 examples through in the system this morning. So, one of the ways we can change price lists is on the basis of item prices, and we'll see an example of that. It'll make a little more sense, I think, in the example. We can also change the base price list that a price list is based on, or the factors. We can do that. We can actually convert the overall currency of a price list. And in cases where you have units of measure specific price lists, and this will probably make sense only to those who use unit of measure specific price lists, but in a unit of measure specific price list, you'll typically specify that if I sell 1 of this item, it's this price. If I sell 12 of this item, we reduce the price by 5%. This particular function of the price list update wizard allows you to adjust that reduce by percentage, essentially. Okay, so the first one we're going to look at is going to be updated on the basis of the first criteria, item prices. So we'll move over back into the demo system. Again, stop me if any of my screens aren't refreshing properly. So in this particular case, we're going to go to the price list update wizard. The great thing about most of the wizards in Business One is that there's a brief description provided at the outset of the wizard that talks to you about what the wizard actually does. We're also, after these 2 examples, I'm going to kind of take you through and show you where the e-learning is for the price list update wizard. So I'm going to do 2 examples this morning, and then if you want to learn the other 2, I'm going to suggest that you go ahead and do the e-learning on your own. But I will make the commitment that if anybody gets stuck on the e-learning, you can certainly call me or call Jerwin, and we'll help you out with making sure that you've got access to it. Okay, so the first method would be by item price. So in this particular example, a sales manager wants to adjust all products for a certain manufacturer by 5%. Let's just select the item prices field, and we've got a few possibilities here. So we can choose to either multiply, divide, add, subtract, or just set a straight up value for item prices. In this particular case, we're going to increase all item prices in the price list by 5%, so we'll multiply by a factor of 1.05. Okay, once we've selected that update method, then we can actually select the range or the criteria of the prices that we want to apply that method to. And this is a two-step process. So in the first step of the selection criteria, we're allowed to select a range of vendors, a range of items, an item group, or a manufacturer. And in this particular demo system, I actually don't have manufacturer set up. So alternatively, what we're going to do is we're going to choose to apply it to a specific item group. And it doesn't just have to be one thing selected. We could actually select an item group, and we could select all items in this group from a certain vendor. So, in that case, we could choose this particular vendor because this vendor gave us a pricing update, where other vendors on similar items did not. So we'll choose that. We can also use the item properties in the item master. So if anyone here is using item properties, we can use that as a selection criteria for prices. A couple of other really important flags here. Do not update unpriced items. So if you don't want items that have a blank price to be updated, then we'll check this flag. And the other flag being do not update inactive items. So for companies that have a lot of SKUs in their system, some of which might be dummy items, some of which may be inactive, you can choose not to update those. So if we move to the second selection criteria, we're now able to choose what price list we're applying the update to. So this particular update may only apply to the regular sales price list. It may apply across the board if we're looking to, if it's a vendor price change. And of course, remember that our regular sales price is based on our MSRP. So we can choose to apply the pricing changes to one price list, or through this selector, this ... selector, we can actually choose to apply it to multiple price lists. In this particular case, and you can see what the price lists are based on here, of course. In this particular case, we're actually going to choose to update the MSRP price and the 2-year price because they're independent price lists. Regular sales price is already based on MSRP. So when I select MSRP as a choice, you can see that regular sales price is grayed out because it's already going to be affected by a change in the MSRP. Okay. We can also choose whether we're updating the pricing for all currencies or just the primary currency. So if we had our Canadian dollar pricing and we also wanted to bump the US dollar pricing and the euro pricing, we could do so at the same time. Okay, and we can also go further. For those of you that are using multiple units of measure, you can choose to update the pricing on multiple units of measure. So in this particular case, we don't have multiple units of measure set up, but if we had a units of measure group that specified that there were eaches of this items and then 6-packs and then 12-packs, we could update the 6-pack and the 12-pack price by the same factor at the same time. So we're just going to leave this particular selector as such. The next step in the wizard is you actually get to preview the changes that it's looking to make and accept them. So if we maximize the screen a little bit, in this particular case, because we're updating from the smartphone group, there's really just one item in the smartphone group, so it zeroed in on that. We have also specified that we want to update the MSRP and the 2-year pricing by 5%. So here's the current price, here's the suggested new price, and in order to select this, we simply put a check mark in there. If there were multiple items in this list, we could select all of them at once by sort of shifting and clicking. And notice how there are other selector criteria for how many items are displayed on the page here. So it'll tell you how many pages of price changes there are. You can also choose to fit more prices on the page. So if we had a significantly large list, we could actually choose to display 500 individual prices at the same time. We can also group this output by price list instead of principally by item. So if we do it by price list, you can see that you know, within the MSRP price list, here are the changes. Within the 2-year, here are the changes. And they're sort of written in alternating colors just for contrast, but we can select those by that as well. If we're happy with the changes, we can go ahead and we can click Execute. It's going to remind us that you know, these changes are not reversible. So we'll go ahead and we'll click OK, and then it'll give us the result of the changes there. All right, and if we're all right with that, we can go ahead and click Finish and close the wizard. Okay, the second scenario that we're going to see today is changing the base price list or the factor for certain select items. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to open up our price list wizard again. Oh, sorry. I'll just officially show you the screenshot we had here. Gives me a moment to flip the pages here. So in our last example of the day, we're going to look at the scenario that uses the second option of the wizard. Currently, one of our sales price lists, and we'll say the regular sales price in this case is based on the MSRP price, which has a certain factor. I believe it's 1.2 right now. And the sales manager wants to change the factor for a certain item group to 1.1 because of increased competition in that particular base of items. So let's see how we can do that. Okay, so we open the price list wizard as we had before. And instead of item prices, we change it to base price list. Now we have a number of possibilities here. In this particular case, we're in order to kind of choose what, if we wanted to change the base price list itself, we can change two things in this particular option. We can change the base price list that another price list is based on, or we can change the factor. So if we leave it as current base price list, then we're leaving it the same. So we're actually interested in changing the factor on which the regular sales price is based on. If we actually wanted to base the regular sales price on itself, we would choose this option, same as target. So we could actually disassociate a price list from another price list that was previously based on by choosing this option here. If we choose current base price list, then it's going to leave the base price list the same. But we could change it to something else. If all of a sudden MSRP wasn't valid anymore and we developed a new MSRP price list, maybe MSRP-new, we could change what it's based on. In this particular case, we want to change the factoring of certain items within the regular sales price list to 1.1, but we want to leave some of the other pricing alone. We want to leave it at 1.2. And we have a particularly long SKU list. In this demo system, we don't have so many SKUs, but we're sort of taking the example that we do have a lot of SKUs. All right, so in this particular case, we're going to change, and I believe we've got items in the service charges group. So the services on things have become quite competitive. We want to leave the factoring of the other groups like radios and smartphones and accessories alone. And we want to change the factoring of service charges. Okay, and again, we have the same selection criteria that we did before, so we can really zero in on things if we want to. Now, of course, we want to change the regular sales price, so we would select it here. So that's going to, again, zero us in on what price list we're changing. We won't touch the unit of measure for the time being. And so in this particular case, because we changed the factor of a certain item group, there's really one item in this group, and you can see the current price is 30, but the new suggested price is $27.50, and that's simply by saying that we want to change the factor from 1.2 to 1.1. There are no additional currencies set up for this price, so they're reading 0 and 0. Again, if you don't deal with additional currencies and you find that those fields are just confusing you, then we can disappear them. We can make them go away just by doing that. Okay. If we're okay with this price change, we would select it, and again, we would hit execute, and away we go. All right, so we've seen a couple of scenarios under which the price list update wizard can kind of take you one step further to manage, a price list that is long, but where you want to change the pricing on items that match a certain criteria, match a certain pattern. It takes you much farther than what the sort of standard ability is in managing price lists. Okay, so let's say you love what you see today and you want to take it one step farther. So the last two examples are very, very, very similar to the first two, changing the currency of a price list or changing the unit of measure pricing. So I'd like everybody that is super interested in that to go ahead and get themselves involved in the online learning. And again, if you're stuck in the online learning, Jerwin and I will help you out. So let's take a look. Everybody knows how to find the SAP Business One Academy. A lot of the latest and greatest 9.2 training has now been put on what SAP calls the Learning Hub. It's accessible from the Academy here. So if you go into any one of these areas here, you get training material that applies to versions all the way up to 9.1. But they're putting a lot of their new 9.2 stuff on this Learning Hub. Now, if you don't have a Learning Hub account, any SAP customer is issued what we would call an S user, and that's sort of the traditional way to access the e-learning materials through kind of the traditional e-learning website that SAP had established, and they've sort of refreshed that Learning Hub, and they've made it so that you now have to kind of register. So if you don't have your SAP S user number, that's okay. It's not too difficult to sign up for an account. You see this particular statement says if you don't have an eLearning Hub account, use this Business One registration page. Registration is open to the public, so you don't have to be a paid Business One customer to access the Learning Hub. Once you do have either your S user number or the registration login that you create on this page, then you can click through to the Learning Hub and what's called the Learning Journey. And this particular Learning Journey is all about learning the new stuff that's in SAP Business One 9.2. So if we go through this learning material, and you can see that it talks about the amount of hours that's required for each module of the e-learning, but at the end, you get this wonderful little certificate that says you're certified on all of the latest and greatest in 9.2. Within this first branch, you can see SAP Business One Logistics. We've got e-learning respected to pricing in Business One. And I'm going to click on the e-learning. I'm going to go ahead and click login, and my username and password is already remembered. And then this module will open up, and in particular, it's the course here with respect to updating prices. If I click on this, I can go ahead and excuse me, run the course. And there's a couple of options here. There's a PDF presentation, and there's also a simulation for updating price lists. So, you know, if we wanted to run that simulation, we go ahead and click OK, and it'll launch the e-learning on that particular topic. Okay, we won't go through it during the webinar, but just to kind of show you, here's how you're accessing the 9.2 change training. Of course, we're certainly doing a lot in our webinars to kind of make you aware of these changes and sort of get you off and running, but we also certainly do want you accessing the materials. And you can see in this case, this simulation is sort of like a running video that sort of guides you through step by step on how to do some of the features. Okay, so at this point, I think I'll open the floor for questions, and I noticed that there is a question here. The question was, where can we find our S-user number? Is it under About SAP? The S-user number, you'll have to ask your relationship manager or one of the consultants here. S-user number is something that's assigned to you during your original SAP implementation for the most part, but it's something that sort of you may not be using if you're not accessing training material. The S-user number is essentially a company's own login account for accessing, SAP products and services. You can access e-learning. You can download versions of the software. That's what an S-user gives you. And anybody in a customer company is able to have their own S-user number. But if you don't have it, it's not necessarily something you can find on your own. It's something you'd probably have to ask Derwin or I about, or your friendly neighborhood consultant. So I'd encourage that, and we'll get you set up. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. I cannot see more questions, but maybe we should give some extra time to people, so we will wait. Okay, I cannot see any questions, so thank you, Rob, for the presentation, and thank you, everyone, for attending today. You will receive a follow-up email tomorrow with a link to the recording on our website, so feel free to share with anyone in your office that you think might benefit. When the session ends, you will see a short survey display in your browser window. If you could take a minute to fill that in and let us know how we did and what you would like to see in future webinars, we will really appreciate the feedback. Thanks again for attending, and we hope to see you next month's webinar.